like the differences between the different professions, and you pointed at like the doctor thing. So back to like the PCOS, because I think this podcast is mainly for women, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, or at least hormone issues. So you mentioned like supplements. So is that something that you like, you always would want to get all of these things from food first, I assume, is like the kind of idea behind it. So are there supplements that you do recommend, or do you never bring supplements into the plan?
Yeah, it depends. So I always ask for blood work. I feel like you should have at least yearly blood work. What should you have done? You know, cholesterol, triglycerides, A1C, especially for females, thyroid, B12, vitamin D. Not saying I don't want to see vitamin D for males too, but I think that's huge too. And I do recommend you getting that done yearly. And then from there, if there is a deficiency in something, then I do say, hey, let's do some supplements. Especially vitamin D is a big one for a lot. We live in Buffalo. Okay. So sometimes I'm just right off the bat, I'm like, all right, let's do, 1,000 international units of vitamin D a day just to keep you level throughout the year. But other than that, I don't recommend any other supplements. Unless you are trying to become pregnant, or breastfeeding. And then there's where I would like to see a prenatal. If there is something else going on, like you come to me and we're working through everything you're doing, your goals, and you're struggling, say, with sleep, sometimes there might be like a magnesium recommendation in there. It just depends on that person, but I'm not here to, put $500 worth of supplements into your cart and then you purchase them. And then too, sometimes people come to me on a list of supplements and I'm like, whoa, let's back up. Like this happens a lot with my clients who come to me with GI concerns. So they're like, I have gas, I have bloating, I have constipation or diarrhea or whatever it is. And I don't know what it is. I've taken out gluten, I've taken out dairy, I've taken out everything. And they're on a probiotic, which sometimes is not always helpful, but they heard that I need a probiotic. I need I need a prebiotic on top of my probiotic. I need, some random thing that someone's selling online. And just because they look good, you're going to buy it. I've looked at things that people were taking and I'm like, I don't even know what's in this. Half the time they're not third party tested. So that's another thing with supplements, I'm looking for is that they're third party tested. So sometimes I'm like, listen, you need to go off all these supplements and start fresh, and see, hey, are these supplements actually causing these GI issues? Because sometimes you don't even know what's in them. Are there just fillers in there? Is there really what they're saying that's in here? So that's a lot that we go over too. And sometimes they don't like to hear that either because they're nervous to go off that, when in turn, it's really, that's what's causing their issues.
Yeah, I almost feel like if you are having these issues, like there's so many different opinions within, like, do you notice that some dietitians have different viewpoints than you, or you know what I mean? So it's almost difficult for me to be like, okay, I'm just going to do this because one person said this.
No, I get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, there are different viewpoints, and I feel like food is always first, though. I mean,
Mhm.
years ago, were we all taking all these supplements? Like, can we get pre and probiotics from food? Yeah. Do we really need to buy a supplement? And again, like I said, like we don't know really what's in all these supplements. And the only thing you could do is trial and error. And that again has to do a lot. And this kind of goes back to the more of like GI concerns of trial and error. But if there is a deficiency, that is a different story. I had a client, she has an iron deficiency. So she got tested and she has to be on an iron pill, and those are very hard sometimes to take because they give some GI upset. So we're working through ways to take it, things to take it with, blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, not everyone needs supplements. And there will be dietitians that would be like, hey, I need you to be on all the supplements. But that's with anything. And I think that's going to be too like, okay, what way are you kind of driving toward? But also test for yourself. Like, hey, maybe I want to try to be off all these supplements. Do I feel better off of them? You know? So,
Yeah.
or is it, and and this is going to be sometimes too, what happens is some people go off all their supplements, but also change their diet. So was it the supplements or was it the diet and the exercise that they changed?
Mhm.
You don't really know what's causing what's fixing what. And sometimes that's where, a food diary trial and error needs to come in, and you need to remove or add in something one at a time to test for
Yeah.
tolerance.
I have personally, and I feel like this is why this is fun for me too, because I get to talk to people about like things that I firsthand understand. So, like I said, a lot of my friends and I have PCOS. So, we're told to do different things with that. There's supplements that come up. But I think something that a lot of people can relate to, what you brought up with the GI thing, I think IBS is thrown around so much. Like sensitivities to things is thrown around so much. Like for instance, I'm diagnosed with IBS, um, and what was gluten sensitivity, um, lactose intolerance. Like I have all these things, but right now I'm able to eat a lot of things. Like yesterday, I had some issues with my stomach because I had ice cream, so that'll happen randomly. But I just feel like that is something that everybody just puts a band-aid on. So one of the things, so I kind of want to touch back on how you said that about the probiotics and prebiotics, and then what do you think of like digestive enzymes? Because when I went to a nutritionist, I was recommended digestive enzymes, and I can't even remember. Like there were like three or four different things. And then I was taking lactate pills, and I was like kind of away from the gluten. So there's just a lot going on right there. So I feel like a lot of people can kind of understand what we mean when we're talking about probiotics, prebiotics, digestive enzymes. So if you could kind of let me know what your stance is on that. And again, I didn't mean to like push and be like, oh, other people have different opinions, but I think it's important to like recognize that, there are a
Yeah.
lot of competing, opinions. And I think what you're doing is the best way to approach it, in my opinion, going for food first, and exercise and stuff first. So anyways, if you want to kind of give us your side of using probiotics, prebiotics and stuff like that for like gut health.
Yeah. And so I'm going to back up to like where, you had said, I have PCOS, then I have gluten sensitivity and lactose intolerance. So I'm sure for PCOS, you've also heard you can't have carbs. This again is our society is we can't have anything when in reality, it's the dose. And this is just the same thing as the World Health Organization just came out with aspartame might be carcinogenic. Okay. Listen, I will there it is not. Okay. Now that is if you have like 45 cans of diet soda a day. Okay, we're not doing that.
I just saw that and it was like it even acknowledged so small in like the explanation that you have to have so much of it for it
Right.
to have that. Yeah, so that's an important point too.
So they put these headlines out, and it's very overwhelming to people because that's all they read is the headlines. And actually, those studies are very complicated to read for a lot of people. You know what I mean? So they put that out. Okay. Again, it's the dose. 45 cans a day, no one's having that. So the same thing with carbohydrates for PCOS or people with diabetes. When diabetics come to me, they're like, I know I can't have pasta. I'm like, who told you that? Again, no, you cannot have a pasta dish if you go out to eat because that's 5 cups of pasta. But if you were home and had an appropriate portion size, which we can go over, maybe pairing it with some protein and fats, yes. And so that's the struggle. We overeat as Americans. That is our downfall. Okay. Um, and two, going back to like gut health too, before we get into like the gluten sensitivity and lactose intolerance and the probiotics, we eat like crap the majority of time. So really that's probably what's not making your gut feel good for the majority of people. We go on this health streak for 3 days and then we're like, I didn't lose 10 pounds. I'm done. I'm going back to the way I was eating. Okay. So that's too, we can get into that instant gratification that we want as Americans. That really is, we need to give ourselves some time for everything to happen. Your gluten sensitivity, did you have a test done? Who gave you that diagnosis?
It was more like that food diary thing. I tried like the brat diet. Like I used that app to see like what was in things. I tried to stay away from onion powder and like garlic powder. It was one of those things where I went through a bunch of trial and error, and then they said you don't have celiac disease. So you have a gluten intolerance. I felt better when I wasn't eating gluten, but I think it was just because I had less options. And you know what I mean?
Okay, so it sounds like you're almost following a low FODMAP diet with that. You were looking at
Yeah.
FODMAP.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So celiac disease is from gluten. You have an intolerance to gluten, wheat, barley, and rye. Okay, that is done with a blood test. So all these other removal of foods, like an elimination diet, somewhat of an elimination diet, sounding like what you're doing. I'm sure you I don't think you have a gluten insensitivity. Okay, or gluten sensitivity. I don't think you have one. Okay, I can tell you that much. Now you might be sensitive to things like garlic powder, garlic salt, which don't have gluten in them. Okay, but that's just because those are high FODMAP diets, meaning it's very hard for sometimes our body to digest those certain foods. Okay, but that's with anything. That's with eating raw broccoli. So you could have a hard time digesting something extremely healthy on a FODMAP diet. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, but maybe you would tolerate it better if it were steamed rather than raw. Okay. So again, this is all like people think, oh, I have all these problems, and we need to take a look at the bigger picture. I did,
Exactly.
I did a post a few weeks ago because I had a client talking about these bars she was eating. They were like the no cow bars. And I was like, what is in them? Because there's so many protein bars out there. So I looked at them: sugar, alcohols, artificial sweeteners, non-nutritive sweeteners. So like a mix of all these. And I'm like, I have nothing against all those things, but a lot of people have a hard time digesting these things. So it's not the wheat bread that you have a hard time digesting. It's that protein bar that you had at the end of the day that you thought was healthy. Okay. So again, this is where we're not thinking, we're really gravitating towards like specific things when we're not thinking about all these other things that we're doing.
Yeah.
As far as the lactose intolerance, a lot of people have some lactose sensitivity, especially as we age. The thing is with foods that contain, so dairy products contain lactose, which is the milk sugar. Okay. Which is different from a dairy allergy, which would be more towards like the milk protein, which is the whey in the
Right.
case. Um, Whereas like lactose in foods is a different amount. So if you look at ice cream versus say like a Greek yogurt, you're going to have less lactose in that Greek yogurt than you are in the ice cream. So you're probably going to have a harder time digesting that ice cream rather than the Greek yogurt, or as opposed to like aged cheeses. Fairlife milk and Fairlife products, they've come out with a great line. They have a lactate enzyme in them. So a lot of my clients who have some sort of sensitivity to lactose, those are very well tolerated. But yeah, again, it's test for tolerance. So some people can do a glass of milk, but they can't do a bowl of ice cream. Some people could do cottage cheese and Greek yogurt, but can't do milk or ice cream. It's going to vary. Those lactose, you could take a lactase pill. That's fine. I don't think you need digestive enzymes, in my opinion. Can I ask you, what symptoms were you having that she thought you needed that?
I think so I was going to mention too, I had a breath test. I can't remember what that one was.
Okay. For H.
Um,
pylori?
yes. And I've
Yeah.
had that like every year forever. I don't know why, but, and I don't want to make this specific to myself. So I'm trying to kind of make it more broad. For the digestive enzymes, it was because I wasn't able to eat like red meat. I was having trouble with those things. Gluten, like it felt like I couldn't eat really anything without having pain and etc. So yeah, I think this was like years ago, and I've been better. I don't know if it was from my pregnancy too, like something switched.
Yeah. So two things. We'll talk about the whole pregnancy after, but and then we'll get back to the probiotic part too. That I want to answer that question. But so a lot of times digestive enzymes are going to be used if you're not absorbing something, not necessarily for like pain like that, or essentially maybe not tolerating something that well. In that case, I probably would have been like, okay, I need you to do a food diary. If red meat's bothering you, you take it out for a few weeks, but then we're going to reintroduce it later on. And then maybe for those 2 weeks, you do some sort of like a poultry or a leaner meat. It might just be, a lot of people have a hard time digesting red meat. Okay. And it might just be, it could have been the pregnancy. I'm not going to lie. A lot of things change during pregnancy. Like, and that's where, like, especially blood work is going to come into hand. A lot of people then end up with thyroid